Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 6 of Let's Talk Racism. I am Keith Whittier, and I'm extremely happy to welcome you to this series. If this is your first time, guess what? There were 5 other episodes that you should go and check out. And if you are continuing on, again, thank you so much for the support. Today, we are going to be talking with my friends Jen and Kris. I had a conversation with them recently, and we touched on what happened in the States with George Floyd. We had an open conversation about racism. We also talked about, from their perspective as parents, raising kids in this climate. It was very, very good discussion, and I'm very happy to bring it to you now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 6.
Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation continues, and I'm very honored to be joined by two amazing people, Jen and Kris. I think you can tell who is who. On top of working full-time jobs and being amazing people, they're also filmmakers. They have created such instant classics like Hen's Night and Unholy Night. But perhaps the greatest creation of all turns 2 tomorrow, their son Caleb. So guys, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me tonight. I really appreciate it. First and foremost, as we go through this pandemic, how are you guys doing?
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good. Really, we can't complain. We're healthy. It's more time to hang out with the little guy.
Yeah.
And really, we're holding tight. It's been we've made it as fun as you can make this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I think that's what we have to do, is just like make the best of this situation and adapting. And I mean, I know that I'm cooking a lot more, trying out some different recipes. My online shopping has gone up exponentially. I attribute that to my passion to helping the economy. So yeah. Now, yeah. Now, of course, we were all, shocked and outraged by the recent events in the States with the unnecessary killing of George Floyd. And I know that that you guys, like myself, have been posting about it and talking about it. And I started this series as an opportunity to kind of continue that conversation with different people and have different perspectives and different opinions. So I really appreciate you guys, especially with everything else that's going on in the world, taking the time to have the conversation with me. So I wanted to first of all get your take on things in terms of when this was happening, when the video was released. We're hearing about what had happened, about this unnecessary tragedy. Tell me about how it affected you guys.
You go first.
I couldn't actually watch it. Sorry. I couldn't actually watch it at first. And then when I did, like everyone else in the world, I was obviously sick to my stomach. I was hoping it was like fake somehow. I couldn't believe how anyone could treat another human being like that. I'm so sorry. It's something that you can't unsee, right? And then my second thought was, oh my God, how many people went through this that we didn't see?
Yeah, no, I mean it was I follow the news and a lot of online media and stuff. So unfortunately, I've seen my fair share of videos of unarmed people of color being killed or at least abused in terrible ways. And honestly, even when this, like, before I watched it, it just, when I saw people posting about it, I'm just kind of like, another one. Like, this is just how it's been. It's just, oh, another one, And I honestly, it didn't feel different at first. Like, how do you define how much worse one senseless murder is versus another one? Is this worse than Trayvon Martin? I mean, like, how do you even compare these things? It's just terrible all around. And but like, man, when you watch that video, and especially like the full version, it's just so like you know, Jen started crying. I was like yelling at the TV, like, get off. Like, I'm like yelling, like he's passed out, or like, just get off. Like, it's just, I don't know. And I think maybe that's what was different about this. It was so blatant. And it wasn't like a security cam footage. It wasn't like someone filmed it across the street. Like, you were kind of there, you were pretty up close. And I don't know, maybe that just kind of snapped with people in a way that many of the other numerous videos we have of unarmed Black people being murdered never did. But, I don't know.
There was something else this time. I love horror movies. I watch them religiously, and there's a very, very big difference between something being fake and something being real. I have a really hard time with documentaries, like even if it's World War II and they're showing grainy black and white footage of people that have been long deceased. These are things that are disturbing to me. So I tend to avoid real footage.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about, because of, Ahmad and everything that had been happening for months and years, forever. But there was something this time that told me to told me that it was my responsibility to give this man, to use like every fiber of my being to watch what happened to him, because we need to know. We need to see this kind of thing. Fundamental changes need to happen. You need to be so fucking distraught that you will fight tooth and nail to make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's basically, it was obviously grief and sadness, and he yelled out for his mom, obviously, that but in that moment I was George Floyd's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no bouncing back from that. There's none.
Now, you guys have touched on a lot of great points in terms of, I think, why this situation is different, and we're seeing around the world companies are pausing and putting out posts on social media. We're seeing a lot of conversations and a lot of discussions are happening as well. Now, here in Ottawa last Friday, there was a peaceful protest. Our Prime Minister attended it. There have been protests globally, not just, again, North America, but we're seeing it in all corners of the world. But we're also seeing a sentiment in terms of, so for example, here in Ottawa, one of the things that I was seeing on social media, which I couldn't wrap my head around, was people were posting and saying, oh, okay, so if people can get together and protest, I guess everything's open now. Or
Right.
if we can get together, what does that mean? I can go to my softball game now. These weren't people who, to my knowledge, were posting their frustration and their sadness over the event, but being in the somewhat entitled world that we live in, we were hearing people kind of with an entirely different narrative, similar to those people who were saying, once people start looting, they lose the argument. So talk to me about your feelings when you see posts like that, because I know you guys are both very active on social media.
I mean, honestly, when it comes to the looting part of it, unfortunately, when it comes to this kind of stuff, this kind of civil uprising, that's their tactic, though. Their tactic is to just delegitimize the movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so focus on the small amount of people that are looting and just make it all about that. Just that way we can just delegitimize the entire movement. It's like these people don't really care. They just wanted to go smash a target, and it's very, and the people that put these stories out there and post it, like, they're not honest actors. Like, they're not actually interested in what's going on. Like, this stuff is put out there to shift the conversation, because all of a sudden, and I noticed it on my social media feeds, oh, we're not talking about police murdering innocent people anymore. now we're talking about looting, and is it okay to loot? And or we're talking about, oh, is it okay to be in crowds now? And it's like forest for the trees, guys. Like, you got to keep your eye on the prize here. And this is, because they know, and that's the problem. There's no defense for this from the other end, from the police's side, or from anyone supporting the police in this instance. There's no defense. They have no moral argument. So all they can do is shift the conversation. It's the squirrel tactic. So it's like, stop talking about the cops murdering people. Let's talk about the rioters. They're the real problem. Like, how dare they? They're dishonoring George Floyd's memory. So it's infuriating to see decent people fall for it, because it's like I said, it's put out there on purpose. It's not an accident. They do this all the time. We can go back in history to the civil rights movement when Martin Luther King was marching, and you could find tons of media stories about this, just trying to talk about the people, attacking the people personally, or shifting the conversation. This is it's just so frustrating to see it work on some people. And I know that infuriates me. And it's just like, don't fall for it, guys. It's, like, this isn't what we should be talking about.
No.
So
now I don't think we can disagree that there's a systematic racism in our culture, in our society. Now, I have my opinions, but I'd be interested in yours. Where do you guys think that the root of this is? Where does that really derive from? I know I get the fact that the U.S. history has been plagued with that for generations, for centuries, in fact. But when we look at it today, are we looking at something that's basically just been ingrown in that society based on what's happened years ago, or do you think it's things that have happened more recently? Like, when you guys sit back and you think about how can people have these attitudes, because obviously you guys don't, where do you think that comes from?
I'll take this.
First, what I am going to do is grab that box of Kleenex within my sight. Otherwise, it's going to get messy at some point. So I'm just going
to. I guess I can start in the meantime. It's such a deep-rooted problem, and it's. I think for a lot of people, it's so hard, right? Because, like they say, racism, it's not something you're born with. It's something you pick. It's something you're taught.
100%.
And a lot of this stuff is just, grandparents who are kind of racist, raising their kids kind of racist, and then they're raising their kids kind of racist. And, I think maybe it does dilute over, enough generations. And I think that's why I think for a lot of people, there was the appearance of normality, the appearance of no more racism. But unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is just below the surface. And I think the past, I don't know. I mean, in terms of the U.S., I think ever since Obama got elected, it's sort of, I don't know, man. I think seeing a black man as the most powerful person in the country, possibly in the world, just sort of lit something. I don't know. And I think a lot of, the whole Tea Party movement, which was they said it was about economics, but man, it was no one started this under a white guy president. This seriously started when the black guy got in power, right? It's just, so there was a lot of disingenuous stuff, and it just bubbled up. And obviously with someone like Trump being elected, he kind of gave them the go-ahead, through somewhat coded racism, and also not coded at all. Like, Trump's been the most, like, there's been a lot of coded racism in the US for a very long time, mostly from one side of the aisle. But Trump just, like, he threw out the dog whistles, and he was just saying this stuff out loud. And I think that emboldened a lot of people.
It emboldened them. And at the same time, like you said, it's very accurate. People aren't born racist. It's something that you learn over time. Part of the problem is that look at what we're taught in school, or what we're not taught in school. Like, when we learn about Canadian history, it sounds like, oh yeah, lots of people just made some really good deals and this is what happened. They don't talk about the genocide of our Indigenous people. They don't talk about how difficult the Europeans made their lives. Same thing with the United States. There's no viciousness in the text. It looks like everything were trades and deals, and it's inaccuracies in history. It's going to museums and seeing, I don't know, statues of Confederate generals. These are people that people like salute and support. And, you know, like Christopher Columbus, what a fucking psycho. Literally, like, why is there a day named after him? Like, it's, our history has not been told accurately. And I think that in grade 5, when you start learning, you know, like deeper parts of history, I think it's okay to tell children what happened there. This is what happened. There was murder and assaults and things that we don't even want you to ever experience in your life. And I think because those shades are on from such a young age, like I know I grew up in Elmer, we didn't have a lot of people of other ethnicities, mostly Caucasian. And it was such a big difference for me moving to Elmer from Montreal, where, like, you know, like there were very few Caucasians in my class. So I figured, yeah, this is what normal is. And then we move over here and I'm like, whoa, so many freaking white people, right? Like, and it was a big adjustment for me as a child. And my parents were always super, super honest with me. They were honest with me when my school curriculum wasn't.
Yeah, no, and Jen's right though, because if you grow up never really understanding the history of racism, especially in a country like the U.S., but by all means, we got a ton of it too. But you know, when you don't really understand the history of it, and then you hear people say things like white privilege, or like you guys don't understand, what we go through. Like, people get defensive because they're like, what are you talking about? Like, I know my history and everything was fine. Christopher Columbus came and, the indigenous Canadians welcomed him with open arms and everything went well. It's like, no, it didn't. Like, so a lot of it is ignorance. A lot of people don't know the history, and also people have a hard time putting themselves in someone else's shoes, like empathizing. Like, there's just, I don't know, there's just, some people are just, they're not able to see it if it doesn't happen to them or their very immediate circle. People just have a really hard time seeing the world from a different point of view. And it takes time. Again, as a white guy in Ottawa, I didn't experience racism growing up. Like, I personally never really saw it, but as you get older and you kind of, listen to other people, like, tell their stories. And now with everyone having cell phone videos, being able to see it, you're just like, it's undeniable before, because when you just hear things, you think, is it anecdotal? Is it just this person had a bad experience? Is it really that widespread? But now you see it, and you don't just see it once, you see it multiple times.
Once you see it, you start seeing it everywhere. Like, not to minimize the issue in any way, but you know how, like, some people get stuck on a time of day? Like, you're like, how come every time I look at the clock it's this hour? Because you're looking for it now.
Yeah.
Once you've educated yourself on something, you can't stop seeing it. It's just constant all the time.
Yeah, you guys have raised so many great points there, and a lot of the conversations I've been having, I've kind of echoed your sentiments in terms of, in two of the places that you first see it is in the school system, in terms of what we're teaching kids, or more accurately, what we're not teaching kids, and then also in the home, because you see kids of you see young kids of all ethnicities gathering in harmony, and they're oblivious to it until they're taught to hate. And just picking up on your last point in terms of, like, until you see it, I can recall a time where I was with one of my white friends. We're in a store, and I had like a shadow on me the whole time. The store clerk was following me up and down the aisles, and my friend was like, I never noticed it. He's like, but he's like, I never noticed it before. But he's like, but I was in the store. He's like, the guy didn't talk to me. He's like, there are other customers in the store. But he's like, everywhere you walked, that clerk was with you. And you know, there's like lots of different things, like if getting into an elevator and all of a sudden somebody's clutching their purse or things of that nature. So those are things that throughout my life, which have unfortunately become a norm. And I feel that a lot of times people are afraid of people who look different than them, or people who, you know, that they can't relate to. Um, and it's interesting because, so I've always said to you guys that I'm really happy that you guys have children, because you're going to help populate the world with wonderful people. So when you guys, you know, when you guys look at your kids, especially, you know, your son's turning 2 tomorrow, and you look upon this world that he's growing up in, like from a parent standpoint, like what are your thoughts as it revolves around the situations with the fact that you've got your kids? I mean, obviously your daughter's a little older, but you know, you've got an impressionable 2-year-old, well, soon to be hours away from a 2-year-old on your hand. So
yeah. I mean, so first of all, our daughter she is older, but she does have a sister with her mom and her stepdad. Her sister is Black. So Sierra is very aware of, you know, racial discrimination, very protective over her sister, those types of things. Mm-hmm. Very important skills to have as a white woman. And Callum, as far as he's concerned, I marched this weekend so that one day he won't have to, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Hopefully he will just be like, wow, Mom, I can't believe that there was like this whole uprising because of global mistreatment of Black people. And I hope it's a thing that he never, ever has to see. Mm-hmm. And if he does, he's going to know what to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, you know, we were kind of raised more in a racism used to happen, but we're better now.
We're past it.
You know, I mean, and I think this generation or the next generation are definitely going to be raised more on the, I don't know, I think more in a sense of like, hey, racism still happens. You know, you gotta be on the lookout for it, and you have to, you know, you have to do something about it when you see it, because it's still around. Whereas we were kind of, I don't know, like I always got the impression, again, it's, you know, I grew up in a very, you know, a very white family, but, you know, and the people around us, like, we never saw it. So, and I really think there was a genuine feeling that it's a thing in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big awakening for a lot of people. And I think that's going to affect how we raise our kids. I think we'll be way less passive about it. It's not going to be a history lesson. It's going to be a current lesson. It's like, this is what's happening nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, I think that different attitude is going to make a big difference. Because the kids nowadays they're fired up. Like, you know, I didn't go protest to things at their age the way that they do. And you know, that part of it gives me hope.
Yeah.
You know, because when you're raising kids, you always think like, are they in a better world than we were at their age? And, you know, in a lot of ways, the world is much worse. Mm-hmm. But also in some ways, you know, when I see these kids really fired up and, doing whatever they can to make it better, I'm just like, good. The kids are all right. Yeah. As they say, the kids are all right. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe they'll be fine.
It's making sure to sort of support that part of them. You know, like, I'm sure all of us had this little part of us growing up that always spoke up because we didn't know better. Let's keep that. Mm-hmm. Because we got a filter that we didn't need. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's super, super important to raise my son Callum, our son Callum, who's turning 2 tomorrow, who is a bright, hilarious, handsome boy, but he will also be very, very aware that he is privileged. Mm-hmm. And he has to use that to help other people. No holds barred.
I think it says a lot about you guys as parents, and that's why I'm very honored to have you guys as friends. I think as we're seeing this movement right now, again, one of the things that's different is people of all ethnicities are taking up this cause. This isn't, a black cause. This is a human cause. This is, to your point, like human beings should not be treated that way in any way, shape, or form. And I think we're seeing a level of outrage that we haven't before. And the reason I say that is because my concern was that this was going to be a rinse and repeat situation where we've seen the situation before. People are upset and what have you, but it kind of dies down and it goes away. We're seeing major organizations pausing and reflecting. We're seeing lots of conversation happening, and we're seeing from all different sides and all different ethnicities that people are saying enough is enough. That this isn't that this isn't acceptable.
Yeah, it's not acceptable. And I think that one of the mind shifts, one of the most important things that a white person can do right now is realize, and I posted this earlier, and I'm stealing someone else's tweet, and I wish I knew their name right now. But things get better when white people realize that this is not a black issue. This is a white issue. And white people have to be the ones to fix it.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good point. I mean, we need allies, right? And we need people because we have done, a lot, and we're looking for help. And it's nice to see that help is coming, because I think about like conversations, like, people, a group of people together, and somebody says a racist joke. Somebody's got to shut that down and say that that's not acceptable, as opposed to just laughing and going along with it. I had a conversation the other day. Somebody was at a store and they were attempting to use their debit card, and they were concerned about the security of tapping their card or using Apple Pay. And there was, well, isn't somebody in China tracking me? Like, why does it have to be somebody in China tracking you? Like, first of all, let's dispel with any myth. You're being tracked as soon as you use your card. People know where you're shopping. But why is it somebody in China tracking you? Like, just that level of mentality, and the fact that people say things like so flippantly. When Corona/COVID started, the mentality was, well, you know what? It's a China problem. It's not our problem. It's not going to come here. It's a China problem. Let them deal with it. So it kind of comes back to, and I'm not trying to sound all kumbaya-ish, but I don't look at it in terms of there's one race. It's the human race. We are human beings. But there's a lot of people who have that mentality where it's like, the white race is the superior race and it's perfect, and everybody else is kind of beneath them. And it's again, it's something that was ingrained with them, whether it be our educational system, whether it be conversations they had around the dinner table. But it's just not so. I mean, I don't look at myself as, superior or inferior to anybody. I look at myself as equal. I treat people, I treat people the way I want to be treated. And I think I also teach people how to treat me in terms of letting people know what will and will not slide with me. So I'm always trying to loop my head around people who have like this extremely different mentality on something as something that nobody has control over, which is the pigment of their skin. So
no, and it's interesting to say that, because again, I think it's one of those things that if anything positive comes out of this pandemic, is that maybe it'll force us to really, get out of this tribalism that a lot of people are stuck in. Because just because it happens in China doesn't mean it's just China's problem, or just because something's happening in Australia doesn't mean, well, it doesn't affect us. And I think there's a lot of that, and it's a problem because it trickles down in so many different ways. Even when you talk about environmental causes, and you're like, well, why should Canada lower their emissions? China's not doing anything about it. And it's kind of like, we got to stop looking at things like that. And maybe this pandemic is going to open that up a bit. Maybe people are going to realize, hey, what matters in other parts of the world affects us. And maybe it's our job to try to lift all parts of the world You know, because that should be the goal, right?
Yeah.
Like that everyone everywhere lives a decent way of life and a decent, you know, people are able to make a living and, you know, do their thing and not, you know, not have horrible things happen to them.
Yeah.
And it's something we could do as a species. Like we can do this,
Yeah.
but we're kind of choosing not to.
Yeah.
You know, because we got to look out for ours, and that's them over there. It doesn't matter with us. And
Yeah.
you know, again, a lot of that trickled down into, you know, a lot of these racist ideas, because they're just like, oh, well, that's, you know, brown people or black people. That's not me. It doesn't affect me. So why should I care? And it's like, well, you should care because these people are your neighbors, and you know, they're coworkers, and it's yeah, it's a tough mentality to break through. So maybe fingers crossed we're going to make some progress on that moving forward. We'll see.
Definitely hoping so. Listen, I want to thank you guys both so much for, I know you've got, again, we're in the middle of this pandemic. You've got your son's birthday tomorrow, for taking the time to talk with me tonight. I really appreciate it. I've always loved talking to you guys. I truly appreciate your friendship, and hopefully the next time we get together, we'll have something else to talk about, as this won't be still at the forefront.
Not for me, Keith. I'm sorry. I plan on annoying the shit out of people for the rest of my life with my anti-racism dialogue.
Well, what I mean is in that I'm hoping that there's not another case like in 2 weeks. I'm hoping that there's not another situation that we need to dial back in and talk about, and we actually start to see some meaningful change.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, I've been dealing with this my entire life, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. I am just trying to be hopeful. We've been talking with Jen and Kris Lariviere. They are people who, again, I've always valued their opinion, and I think you can understand why. Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation is going to keep going. These conversations are going to keep going on. I invite you to keep tuning in. And again, guys, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure, Keith. And I'd like to have a conversation with you at any point, basically on your experiences. Like I said, we're here to listen to you too, and we're here to learn. And I know you're probably exhausted, as most people are. And I know you've had a lot of your own life experiences and lots of stories to tell, but you know what? They're yours to tell. And if ever you want to tell us, we're right here.
I really appreciate that. I really do. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Bye.
Love ya.
Love you guys.